Hello, everyone, and welcome to ASI Hour. It's very nice to be here tonight, and we have a very special guest with us tonight, Dr. Neil Nedley, currently serving as the president of Weimar. And I would love to see who we have with us tonight. So in the chat box, if you could leave your name and where you're from, let's see who we have with us tonight. I see we have about 20 right now and more coming in. And okay. Yeah, Brother Fuller from Ottawa. Okay. And Sharon from Cleveland, Maryland, Jersey, Delaware. Well, that's fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. Hi, Lee. Kevin Gomez from New York City. Nice, Kevin. All right, we've got some more people coming in. It's very nice. Dr. Nedley, thank you so much for joining us tonight and being with us and telling us some things that are happening. I mean, you're now the president of Weimar, and I know you're a physician. And how did you become interested in the field of medicine?
Well, interestingly, I don't have any family members that, were doctors, at least at that time. Of course, a couple of sons now have changed things. But my father was an engineer, not in medicine at all. I didn't have any siblings that were in medicine. So when I was growing up, although I was doing well academically, people would say, well, you should be a doctor. And I would say, well, there's one thing I know I'm not going to be. I don't know what I'm going to be, but I won't be a doctor. And I became converted at age 15. So I was thinking of being a pastor and evangelist. I was also deeply disturbed by some of the things that were happening politically in our country at that time. And so I realized, to be a senator, you probably need to be an attorney first and work your way up that way. So I was thinking about going into law. And then a few physicians got together from our church and invited me. I grew up in Detroit area. So they invited me to the Renaissance Center and they took me out to eat, and they said, you can be an evangelist being a doctor. You can actually reach people with healthcare that you'd never be able to reach in a church or an evangelistic series. Mm-hmm. And I hadn't considered that before. So I put it on the radar screen of being a doctor, particularly these people I all respected that took me out. And then I did a pro-con list. I'm very objective in how I make decisions and want to look at all the information.
Sure.
And so they all came out even: attorney, pastor, and doctor. So it was kind of discouraging to know because those pathways are very different in school. So I actually set aside a week of prayer, asked my family to pray. We had a day of fasting. And then the Lord impressed me after that day of fasting when we were having sundown worship that he wanted me to go into medicine. And I told my family that, and they said, well, you've been praying fervently. You've had this day of fasting. I think that's what you need to do. And then he confirmed it within a few weeks when I was in the pre-med program, when I was taking calculus. Since I wasn't preparing to be in medicine prior to that, I had only taken 2 years of math in college and in high school. Now I was taking calculus and I didn't know what I was doing at all. And I remember praying to God before the first test, God, I have no idea what's going on in this class. If you want me to go into medicine, you're going to have to help me. And I scored the first 100% that had ever been scored under Dr. Hatcher on that first test, even though I thought I had bombed it. And I realized my angel knew calculus very well and was confirming that the Lord wanted me in medicine and he was going to put me to do that. And so I've never looked back since. I love medical missionary work with the practice of medicine, and we've been able to reach and win many souls for God's kingdom as a result.
Amen. Amen. Well, listen, you were called a few years ago to Weimar, and Why Weimar?
Well, I wasn't anticipating that call. We had just signed to buy a far bigger clinic in Ardmore, Oklahoma. We were expanding. We had mid-levels. I had another doctor that was being hired, and this was a prominent location, and we needed to expand. So I just signed that, and then I got a call from Doug Batchelor from Amazing Facts asking if I would take the presidency of Weimar. And it turns out Amazing Facts had run into a management agreement with the Weimar board, and they were going to manage it for 3 years. And then they would see what would happen by the time of those 3 years, whether it could survive or not. So the college was closing. The next year, the academy was going to close. NEWSTART thought they could stay open, but NEWSTART hadn't figured out that they were dependent on student labor. So without student labor, it wouldn't have been able to survive either. And so when Doug asked me, that was something that was not on my radar screen at all. But with the respect I had for Doug and the respect that God sometimes calls in strange ways, I set that up in prayer and developed a pro-con list as well. Doug and I were speaking together at the Arizona camp meeting after he had asked me, so we got to spend some time together, and I developed this objective pro-con list. And it actually looked like I should stay in Ardmore, Oklahoma. And he said, well, why was that? What were the areas? And I told him 3 areas that were actually unknown that would have tilted it the other direction. And he said, well, let's just assume that those 3 areas are all positive since we don't know about it, and let's step out in faith and let's make this decision.
Wow. Well, I am sure when you hit the ground at Weimar too, you had some real hurdles to make it over. This was a closing university or a closing college. Right. And now you were going to reopen this. That must have been done.
Yes. Yeah, well, the students were down to 8, and then, of course, 0, and the faculty had dwindled down to almost nothing. So we actually had to hire a full-time faculty before we could actually reopen the college. You got to have teachers that are on board. And so I was still practicing medicine in Oklahoma and traveling back and forth. But, I've never taken more than a pastor's salary for my own personal income. And I had read Ellen White's writings enough to know that the pastor and the doctor were to work together, and they were to be on similar salaries. And so the excess we always put into the Lord's work. And so on that excess, I put it into hiring this staff at Weimar, and sacrificially stepped out in faith to hire all these people and to get it started again. And God ended up blessing. The first year and a half, we weren't sure. We were losing a lot of money. But after a year and a half, we started running in the black, and we've been running in the black ever since. And not without donations. We still require people that are ASI members, as well as some non-ASI members who understand the importance of true education and understand the importance of us not accepting government funds. And so it's kind of amazing, really. In fact, a lot of I sit next to UCLA presidents and college presidents, Ivy League presidents, now that I'm a president of a university, and we go to some of these same conferences and things. And they're absolutely amazed that we can run in the black without government funds. And they get immediately jealous because it's kind of like, we have to follow all these government mandates, and they hate a lot of them as well.
Sure.
Even Harvard, the wealthiest university, we found out can't run without government funds. They had to borrow $200 million to make payroll, and they're taking a big risk. They think when the politics changes, they'll get all that money back again. But they would love to not be dependent on government funds. But Weimar even though now we are fully accredited, and most people get accredited so that they can access those government funds. You have to have regional accreditation to be able to access it. So Weimar, prior to that, of course, couldn't even get government funds, but we wanted to show that our education was high end, and true education is really the highest end. And the accreditors have acknowledged this. And so, but we have decided to not pursue government funds so that we can keep it true education. And so God has blessed. We don't look like the other universities because we don't have those millions of dollars flowing in. You know, when you have $200 million flowing in from the government every year, you can start putting up some big buildings, and you can start putting up some nice places, and you can, you know, have a lot of versatility to do what you need to do. But we don't have anything like that coming in. We also don't have any church subsidies. You know, our other universities get church subsidies plus government funds. And so we really run on a shoestring budget, and we've been somewhat surprised because part of accreditation is that we're financially stable as well. But the accreditors keep giving us some great marks, and they acknowledge that they wish our finances were better, but they understand why they're not, because we're not accepting government funds. And they seem to kind of like that too.
How about that? Yeah, yeah. Well, I've been to the campus, and it is beautiful. It's just a beautiful place. So anyone that hasn't been to Weimar, it's somewhere you need to visit. And just to go back to our audience that's with us today, we have Dr. Neil Nedley with us today. If you were a little late coming in, we're talking about Weimar, and we'll be talking about his depression recovery program. Dr. Nedley, a few things about Weimar. It's located about 45 minutes east of Sacramento. You've got an elementary school, you have an academy, you have a university, you have a church, you have a market called Weimart. I love that, Weimart. And a health and lifestyle center for inpatient programs like NEWSTART and the depression recovery. It's all sitting on a little over 450 acres. I mean, it's idyllic. It's and I know that you've really kind of take it. It's a lot like the Madison model.
Oh yes, absolutely. In fact, for our leadership devotions, we actually read about Madison every week. We're reading a chapter. And right now we're reading a new book that came out on Madison, actually looking at all of the minutes and leadership minutes and all the comments in regards to the initiation and the first couple of years there at Madison, and seeing what we can learn from that. The Madison model is still a great model to learn from, as well as learning from some of the mistakes as well.
Sure. And I know that, you know, there's a work study program for the students. I mean, the work is part of it.
Right.
And they help out around the school in all kinds of ways and help keep it beautiful. And it's a wonderful system. What are the degrees that Weimar offers?
So we offer a natural science degree. And that natural science turns out to be very good for pre-med, pre-dent. So a lot of our students go into dental school, medical school, physical therapy school, any allied health types of things. The one interesting aspect we didn't know when we started our natural science major, that we're the only natural science major in all of our North American division universities. And as a result, some of our pastors' kids who, and of course it depends on the conference, but some of the conferences don't pay the subsidy. If they go to Pacific Union College, they'll pay the 70% tuition. But a lot of conferences say if they can't get the studies at our other colleges and it's unique at Weimar, then we'll match the tuition match that we would match otherwise. And so things like our health program that is very unique to Weimar, things like natural science, it is unique. And so even pastors' kids can access those aspects of the university. But we also have our nursing program, both an associate's degree, registered nursing, and a bachelor's degree. The bachelor's degree is starting to gain in popularity as well. And they learn comprehensive health evangelism there, as well as all of the nursing things. We have 100% NCLEX passage rate. Our nursing program is rated up within the top programs in the Western 8 states by the Nurses Almanac. Great clinical experience. And of course, they also learn lifestyle and nutritional interventions in the treatment of disease, which other nursing programs totally neglect. And so our nurses are getting some very good top-level jobs as a result of their comprehensive knowledge of health and wellness, as well as how to treat disease with more than just pharmaceuticals and allopathic medicine.
And you have a high percentage of acceptance to medical school too. Is that correct?
Yeah, when our accreditors were here last year, they wanted to see our data on that, so we had to actually explore it. And so it's a 94.6% acceptance into U.S. medical schools. We actually don't know of another university that has a higher acceptance rate. And it's not just Loma Linda. I mean, they're getting accepted at other medical schools as well. In fact, one of our graduates is the president of Indiana University, which is considered a high end of his student body in medicine right now. And he's actually holding Bible studies with his fellow students, and he's quite an evangelist, and he's president of his class.
Wow.
At Indiana University. And so we have, and so, yeah, this is God. And of course, one of the things that really helps, they do very well on the standardized tests. And that's because every course at Weimar, you don't take organic chemistry, you don't take general chemistry, you take knowing God better through the study of general chemistry. So every class is entitled Knowing God Better Through the Study of. And our classes are designed so that you learn biblical principles that parallel the scientific principles or whatever principles are being taught in that class. And so students at first think, wow, this is a lot to learn, because I'm not only learning chemistry, I'm also learning Bible theology along with it. But they say it helps them greatly on standardized tests, because standardized tests are always creating new test questions that no one's ever seen before, but they know that you can figure it out. They're like an IQ test. If you have a knowledge base, can you solve an unfamiliar problem? Because they're testing your IQ. And our students will say, when they see this question that they've never seen before, they'll remember the biblical principle first that parallels the chemical principle, and then they'll solve the problem. And so we've had many students actually graduate that have not missed a single question on, for instance, chemistry in the MCAT or the DAT exam. And you can get an idea why medical schools like our students.
That's quite amazing. Yeah. You have something called total community involvement. Could you talk about that?
Yeah, so we abbreviate it TCI. I know the church has a program called TMI, Total Member Involvement. But sometimes we call it total campus involvement as well, because our entire campus empties out on Wednesday afternoon, our faculty members, our students. We have multiple teams that go to multiple areas of the of this part of the Sacramento area, and we serve the community. And so it's volunteer work. We put in over $1 million of service that's free every year for our community. And so, and there's different facets of that, including even healing music therapy. And you know, there's a lot of atheists, you know, we're California, so there's a lot of atheists here. But when they see our students and get to meet our students and see how they're helping them, it's not a leap at all for them to start believing in God. Said, I didn't believe in God before, but there has to be a God, because who would come and do these types of things? And do you want to study the Bible with me? I'd like to learn what you guys know. And so many of our TCI contacts have joined our Weimar church. It's not a typical university church. It's actually very much a soul-winning church in the community. And our students get to see this. They get to participate in the Bible studies. They get to see how TCI works. And this is really medical missionary work, the way it was described by Ellen White, and in being of service to the community, particularly with the health bent as well. And we even have a free TCI clinic. So if someone has a condition and can't pay for it at all, this isn't open to everyone, but it's open to our TCI contacts from the university. They will actually come and schedule an appointment at the Nedley Clinic. We will see them for free. And so far, everyone that we have seen in that clinic within 6 months to a year has become a baptized Seventh-day Adventist. So when they get that full comprehensive health care, they see whether we're doing it in care for them, and they see what we are recommending truly works for their life, and they're feeling far healthier than ever before. They love the spiritual aspect. It helps them with the self-control on their nutrition and lifestyle principles. And so they're asking, we don't have to ask them to join the church. They're asking us if they can join.
Well, I think that's a good place to make a little switch and go in the direction of your programs. And, how did you've got this depression recovery program. How did you become interested in depression recovery?
Well, I'm an internal medicine physician. That's adult diseases of the internal organs, which of course include the brain. So I studied the brain more from a neurological perspective, which is as people that are involved in neurology and psychiatry will call psychiatry the subjective science and neurology the objective science. But I was seeing so much depression. It's risen, nationwide. And I was seeing so much depression that I realized I needed to become an expert in it. I used to teach my residents, you need to learn the common diseases well, because you're going to see this every day, and you need to learn them as much as an expert in this area, because these are common diseases. And so I had to ask myself, did I know depression as well as a psychiatrist? At that time, I didn't. And so I began to actually hang out with psychiatrists and learn more about it. But I started recognizing how they worked. And that is, they diagnosed the psychiatric conditions based on the subjective symptoms. The whole DSM criteria of psychiatric diagnosis is not based on a finding on an MRI or a finding on an EMG, which is objective. It's based on the subjective symptomatology. But, they all have to talk the same language, so I understand the need for that. But then they would go straight into treatment without actually trying to find out the cause. And that's how psychiatry worked. Fortunately, it's changing as a result of our work and the work of a few others. So I, as an internal medicine physician, we were always trained to find the cause, and then we're far more likely to find the cure. And so I began to research. I asked the psychiatrist I was rotating with, how many causes do you think there are of depression? And they would say, maybe 8 or 10. Mostly it's unknown. We don't really know the cause, and they knew genetics could be part of it, and thyroid. So they named a few, but they couldn't name them all. And I said, well, if I start looking for them, how many am I going to find? And they thought it would be less than 20. I began to get depressed when I found cause number 71 and still was not through yet. And after compiling over 100 different causes from the medical literature that were well proven, I didn't realize I was the first one to do that medical search in that way. And so then we started to categorize them, and there's 10 different categories of hits. And then we started to do statistical analysis on our patients and found out that there has to be 4 different categories or more before depression or anxiety comes about. The brain's pretty resilient. It can undergo 1 or 2 of those causes, but once 4 more are there, it's going to happen. And most of those are reversible. So if we were able to reverse it down to 1 or 2 categories, the depression and anxiety would go away. And so that's how we started get involved.
So there's a tipping point at 4 that seems to happen. Yeah.
And you could, if you're into statistics and peer-reviewed medical literature, you could Google my name, and it's called the Nedley hit hypothesis. And we actually paid more when that study was published for it to be downloaded for free for anybody, and you can review that. But that's kind of the basis of our program, and so. We wrote about what we were doing first. So in the outpatient setting, a lot of people were referring to us. This was when I was in Ardmore, Oklahoma, not here at Weimar. And I hadn't been called to Weimar yet. And then we started putting on residential programs for more severe cases. And God worked wondrously to see all sorts of transformation in a pretty short period of time, far shorter than what I anticipated it would be. And so then we ended up writing a book about it, a community program. And then Weimar, I was asked to be president in 2008. 2012, or before that, 2010, our CFO said, please, Dr. Nedley, bring this to Weimar. It would help us financially. And at that time, the Weimar Inn was not in good enough shape to actually hold the program there. But the CFO figured out that if we put the money in to make the inn, nice, high end, and beautiful, that it could easily pay for itself by running the program there. And so Weimar invested the money to do that. I wasn't part of that decision because it could seem as a conflict of interest. Mm-hmm. Of course, I was happy with having it still here in Oklahoma, or it's still there in Oklahoma. So it didn't really affect the program per se, but we did want to help Weimar out. And so as a result, when the Weimar Inn was finished, we just did a copy and paste of what we were doing with the contract with the Lifestyle Center of America in Oklahoma, and moved it over to California, and it's been there ever since. And it turns out it was a great move because a few years later, the Lifestyle Center in Oklahoma sold. It wasn't able to make it financially after we left, and I don't know that they would have continued on because we weren't running the programs on a regular basis there. But when we took it to Weimar, we started to run it more and more frequently, and now it's basically run every month.
Mm. And Weimar Inn is a beautiful inn now. It's I've stayed there, and it's like staying in somebody's home. It's so nice. So.
Yeah,
well, listen, tell us about the program. It's an inpatient program. What's the length, the time, the stay? What are the days like?
Yeah, so it's we call it a 10-day program. It's a full 10 days, but it actually, you come in on a Thursday, you leave on a Monday, or a lot of people come a day early. We allow them to come a day early without extra fees if they come Wednesday, to be able to get adjusted. But the program starts on Thursday afternoon. It ends on the Monday morning. So it takes an entire week in between. And if they need more time, we do allow them to stay there longer. So about 20% are going to need a full 17 days. 80% are going to be already transformed, and they're already ready for their re-entry and doing very well. And they're amazed themselves. There's a whole lot of people that think I'm going to have to need the 17 days. I've been depressed for 20 years and it's severe, and I'm on all these drugs. And we're able to tell them by day 9, you're actually ready to go home. You're doing well. And they can't believe how much better they feel. But once we start dealing with the underlying causes, which include biochemical, my undergraduate degree is in biochemistry. And so I love the biochemistry of the entire body, but I was also very much in gastroenterology, and GI has the same neurotransmitters in the brain. So I was familiar with all of those things. And so we've been able to identify genetic mutations that can be, through epigenetics, solved. So none of the adverse effects of the genetic mutations are manifest anymore with just some simple supplements that address the mutation. We've been able to do a lot of other things, nutrition and lifestyle wise, to actually perfect the brain biochemistry and actually prove afterwards with the blood tests that we've perfected it. And then the other big arm is the cognitive part. So what we have found out is even if we perfect the brain biochemistry and there are irrational thought patterns in the brain that people have been utilizing for years, those are like LA freeways of thoughts. And so we have to do this in combination with cognitive behavioral therapy, where they're able to recognize their thoughts as irrational and start laying down some new highways of helpful, useful thoughts. And it's a lot easier when you have a better biochemistry in your brain. So those two things work together to produce the transformation. And then when you add the spiritual component, and our spiritual chaplains are very adept at cognitive behavioral therapy. We have two professional counselors for every person, one on purpose and spiritual, the other on their thought processes. And then we have the physician end working on the biochemical aspect of things. And with those three things, it turns out to be a very unique program. And those three things can actually totally eradicate most mental illnesses, and depression and anxiety can be eradicated in as little as 10 days. Some people, it might take 17.
Well, we think about this in terms of, needing to be put on medications for years. And I'm sure it's pretty shocking for these patients that come in there that have been on medications for years, and they've decided to try this, and in 17 days, they walk out changed.
Yeah.
The stories, I'm sure that, the stories you have of some of these are just amazing.
Well, and it's every month we have these stories, and it is amazing. It's just wonderful to be, there's a full Sunday before they leave, and they realize the next day they're leaving. And so they start telling their story. They give their testimonies, and they're as amazed as anybody. But, we often hear, this is the best I have felt my entire life. And now I realize I'm going to be able to handle my life. And I have the tools now to be able to handle very challenging situations. And the biggest reward is to just see the changes in people in that period of time. Even psychiatrists can't believe it. The psychiatrists that have come to our program, everyone has said, I've heard about the results, but I thought they were being overblown. And they'll say, I've seen more changes in 10 days in these patients than I've seen my entire career in psychiatry. And we repeatedly get those comments from professionals that visit our program. But that's because it's God's program, as I see it. It's not Weimar Nedley per se. We're just following the Lord and being guided by Him. And the Lord really desires to help people with mental illness. Mm-hmm. And even the Bible, they'll find out the Bible is actually more of a book about mental illness and emotional intelligence than just about anything else. From the stories to the principles, it turns out it meshes so well with the science that's been developed in regards to optimal brain health. And so they begin to get confidence in the Word of God. And they see how the science lines up with that. And so, it's amazing. And so, we have baptisms every month out of our program. And then even after the program is finished, we have many people that were not quite ready to make the full commitment that are making that full commitment within weeks of the program.
Weimar is an unusual place. I mean, you have the highest level of medicine happening there, and you also have a faith-based campus, a faith-based university. And you're seeing these things happen to people. Can you, I know you can't share names and all that. We're not looking for names, but could you tell us, are there any stories of some of these people, testimonies that you could share?
Yeah, well, I could also refer you to places where they've shared them themselves. Recently, Hope at Night did an interview with one of our patients, Jared. Jared was one of those severe cases, a young father, military background, and all sorts of issues, and was totally transformed. And he was interviewed on the Hope channel, but he was also, on addictive drugs. Many of these people with mental illness, they start to self-medicate. And so, he was on opioids, he was on benzos, and he was doing other things that were addictions that he thought he needed to do in order to just function and not crash. And the first 3 days tend to be a little bit rough because, we are making changes. And also they realize that they can't, this is one of the reasons why it's a residential program. They can't just refuse to not get up in the morning. They can't refuse their light therapy. And so 5:30 a.m., we're seeing the whites of their eyes, and they're going to start working on their mental health and their physical health. And so the first 3 days can be rough because these people realize, okay, I've paid all this money and I don't even want to be here now because they're making me do this. They're making me do hydrotherapy. They're making me eat this plant-based diet. They're making me exercise. I don't like to exercise. But day 4, things start to change around. They start already noticing improvement. And by day 7, they bought into the whole thing. And it's like, wow, this is the type of life I want to live from now on. It's really helping me. And by day 10, it's like they can't say enough good about what happened. And so Jared was in that camp as well. He was ready to get out of there by day 3. And he tells his story. And then he tells the story. There was a spiritual transformation. He didn't want to do hydro. And the hydrotherapist said, yes, you're getting into the tank. He said, I am not getting into that tank.
Now just talk for a minute about hydro. What is hydro? What happens?
Well, it's contrast hydrotherapy. And as the research shows, it has to be uncomfortably cold to get the heat shock proteins to improve the overall brain function. So they're in a nice hot tub, but then we put them in a cold bath. Okay. Now, it's not dangerously cold. So we keep it out of the danger zone. So it's not going to kill anybody and it's not going to hurt anybody, but it actually does help them, and they notice the effects afterwards. And so Jared on Hope at Night, he was being introduced to some of the spiritual things as well in the program. And then he said it was almost like the Lord Jesus spoke to him and said, if I can get on a cross for you, you can go into that cold tank.
What a great quote.
He went into the cold tank after the Lord just gave him that thought. And then his life started to change in wonderful ways. And he's a very successful young man. He didn't even have any libido left with his wife. They were looking like getting a divorce and all that. And now he's had a new son again, and he's a great father. And so that's one. But there's also many others. Also at Hope at Night, I think it just is coming out or just came out. Christy Christopher is another one, 5 suicide attempts. Couldn't work as an ICU nurse anymore. In her 30s, all sorts of self-medicating, and had no interest in spiritual things. She was disciplined when she was at one of our other universities. It was actually Southern. And so she didn't want to have any interest in spiritual things. And so after her 5th suicide attempt, her parents sent her to Weimar, but they didn't tell her it was a spiritual place. She could have read about it. And when she realized, she says, this is not only Christian, which I don't want to have anything to do with. She says, this is Adventist. And it's not only Adventist, she says, this is Adventist. I want out of here. So we lovingly helped her to rationalize and help her through some of the withdrawal process. And by the end of the program, she was asking for Bible studies, and she didn't want to leave Weimar until she was baptized. And now she's raised up a church in Texas of over 100 people doing the community program.
No.
Had no church there at all.
Oh.
And so she has changed so many lives. She says, I think I've saved more lives doing the depression community program than I did as an ICU nurse. And now she's in charge of the emotional intelligence of her entire hospital. They have her as chair as the committee. And she keeps getting more and more raises. And she tells me about him. So she's more than paid for the program 100 times over.
Wow. That is amazing. Amazing. So, I mean, this program's been very successful, and we know that God is involved. What are some of the factors that you really see that make it successful?
Well, the biochemical aspect is unique. The cognitive behavioral therapy is not only cognitive behavioral therapy, it aligns with the Bible. But the other aspect is it is overtly spiritual, but very acceptingly spiritual. So, even atheists will say, I don't want to go to the spiritual part. And I'll say, well, every part of it's required, but we're not asking you to agree with everything. Just agree with what you can agree with and run with that. And that'll help your frontal lobe. And by the time they're through, they're saying, I agree with everything that was presented spiritually. And they're even believing in the 10 Commandments when they see, we actually go through the 10 Commandments before they're through. That's due to Baumeister's research at Stanford that shows when we understand the 10 Commandments, it helps us better with self-control. So we go over those principles, and they even believe in those. And so, and so when the truth is preached in love, it's so disarming. And so we have a lot of people at the end of the program say, I came here for Dr. Nedley's biochemical expertise. This is why I came. But I realized, although that's been very helpful, and I'm very excited to learn what I've learned, and I know it's going to help me, and it's already helped me, I realized what I needed most was the spiritual part. This is what is really transforming me. And so I think, in our health centers, we've not been so intentional on the spiritual health of the patient. And we've been afraid maybe to cross that line. And Weimar does this in ways that attract people from all walks of life. We had 2 Muslims come through a program, a father and son, this past summer. And they were very fearful of the spiritual part. So he was here only for the biochemical part. The son was having all sorts of mental health issues. And he had asked beforehand, I don't want any proselytizing, we're not Christian, we're not any of those things. And so he didn't come to the spiritual counselor for this. He came to me, but the second visit, he said, this Seventh-day Adventist thing, we've never heard of Seventh-day Adventists, but this is just amazing what's being taught here. And he says, I'm just very, interested in this. Well, I thought he might be more concerned. And I says, we'll never ask anyone to join our church. I said, they would have to ask to join our church. And here are these 2 Muslims in the room, father and the son. And the father says, well, that's what I'm asking. He says, this is amazing.
Wow.
So, the Lord works through medical missionary work. And, we only have 100 employees at Weimar, including the faculty, staff, the cafeteria, the plant services. But we have between 50 and 100 baptisms on campus every year through the threefold ministry. And that's a 1-to-1 ratio. If it's 100 and 100, that's a 1-to-1 ratio. And that is the best that you've ever seen in Adventism, for one person to have another every year. And Weimar has been doing this for years. We're just a small organization, so it doesn't, maybe get the press as if there were several thousand, but our goal is to set up a Weimar outside of every city in the US and duplicate this model. This is why we're training our students, et cetera, to do this. And if that's the case, it'll certainly get the attention when it's outside every major city.
Amen. Amen. Everyone, we are speaking with Dr. Neil Nedley tonight, and we have about 15 minutes left on the program, and we'd like to open up the floor for questions. So if you have any questions for Dr. Nedley, please type them in the chat, and we will take a look at those questions. Do patients, I got this question about, while we're waiting here on this, do patients ever worry about starting treatment and, losing part of their personality, during it?
Well, it's interesting that you would say that because, yes, some patients are worried about this, particularly when we discover, when we look at their biochemistry, I will get, it takes about a week for all those labs to come back because they're pretty sophisticated labs. But I will then explain to the patient their personality. And they're just amazed. You know this about me? You know that about me? You know how I think about this? You know how I think about that? It's amazing. You can tell me that from the blood work because it's not things that we've discussed before. I know I'm going to be able to see what they're like when we get the blood work back. And of course, they know we're trying to help their depression and anxiety. And so their question is, okay, you have found this biochemical defect, this genetic mutation that makes me the way I am. Are the good parts of this going to go away when this is treated? And so they're actually fearful that the good parts of their personality, I mean, some of the genetic mutations make them very competitive. It makes them high achievers. They don't want to lose that competitive edge. They don't want to lose that high achieving edge. And I'll tell them, actually, it won't. It'll take care of the bad parts of the personality, but the good parts will remain when we actually treat it through natural means. And so they're relieved about that, and then they're all in, and they notice a big difference.
That's fantastic. We've got some questions here. Well, the first one is, how much does it cost?
So it's a little short of $10,000.
Okay.
And if they need to stay an extra week, that's an extra $3,500. But that's all inclusive. So that's their hotel stay, that's their meals, that's their cognitive behavioral therapy, that's their purpose counseling, that's all the biochemical analysis and workup. It's very expensive, sophisticated labs. Just about everybody says, I've never had this deep dive into me biochemically. So these aren't cheap tests that we're running. That's why they're not done in regular doctor's offices. In fact, they can't be done in regular doctor's offices because there's even special handling of these things. Some of them we have to freeze on contact. Some of them we have to have specialized tubes. And so it's actually, as people will say, it seems like pretty pricey on the front end. But when they leave, they'll tell us, this was actually cheap. To know what I'm getting, I would have paid 5 times this amount to be able to have this type of information and this type of tool set now to be able to help me.
Yeah, because it's unique. It's far more than they've ever gotten before.
Right.
It's quite a bit for that amount of money. It sounds like a real, value to me. How do you get people for the program? How do they find out about you?
Mostly by word of mouth. It's so many are relatives and family members of people who've been transformed, who've come through the program. Of course, these people can't quit talking about it because it's made such a difference in their life. And so word of mouth is number one. We don't have any, marketing campaigns that spend a lot of money on marketing. We can only take 20 patients a program. And so we can't necessarily afford to market it a lot because there isn't another program that has the unique attributes that we have to send them to. So we don't want to be totally overrun. But we do have a fellowship program now. So we are training doctors and nurses to hopefully set up some other centers, like I mentioned to you. And so once we have more of those centers, we might have more of a marketing campaign. But primarily, it's word of mouth. And then, of course, programs like this help people to understand what they could get. And so that Hope at Night program, for instance, a lot of people, when they saw the transformation of these two people, they were calling us to try to get in. Our December program had a lot of people that heard Jared's story and wanted to experience Jared's experience, which occurred in our December program, because Hope at Night had just put that one out.
Now, you say you take 20 at a time. Is it usually a full class?
Usually it's a full program.
And we have a question from Lee. What is your secret sauce to not get colds?
Well, I wouldn't say that I've never gotten a cold, but I don't know if you know about my story. I think I tell it in our book, Proof Positive, but I grew up having severe colds as a kid and even into college and medical school. And when I was at Loma Linda in medical training, my mother says, "You've got to see the specialist there, see the infectious disease specialist. Something's wrong with you." And, they couldn't figure out anything that was wrong. And it was my first year at Kettering when I was doing my internal medicine internship, my first year there, that I came across the health advantages of a plant-based diet. And so after studying it out, first I was very skeptical. And after studying out with the research, I told Erica, and the first date we had, she was eating meat. And I was lacto-ovo vegetarian. She became lacto-ovo. So I didn't know how this would occur. This was just, the first year of marriage. I come home to her and said, "I've been researching this out. We're not on the best diet." "What is the best diet?" she says. I said, "A plant-based diet." Says, do you think we can transition that way over the next year? She says, "The best diet. Let's start it now. I can do some research and we can do this." After I got rid of dairy, it turns out all my infections were dairy allergy.
How about that?
After I got rid of dairy, I never had another cold. And the first time I had a cold was 5 years later when I was over someone's house and I didn't want to offend them by not drinking their milk on their cereal. I got another cold. But there's other things. The hydrotherapy helps the innate immunity. So that's going to help significantly. Being out in the sun helps our innate immunity. So there's a lot of things in the NEWSTART aspect of our lifestyle that can help us even prevent the common cold and even not get the flu.
Mm-hmm. So Calvin is asking or saying it would be great to have this all over the world, not just the United States. And I heard what you were saying. You're training fellowships right now to spread this type of program around.
Yes. So we recognize this needs to go viral, and we are hoping and praying for ways to accomplish this.
Well, it's that's the next question from Milka. You said the vision is duplicating Weimar or having Weimar center model. What do you think would hasten the vision?
Well, it's trained personnel. One of the things we've had, for instance, there was a doctor that came to our EQ summit for 3 years, and he shadowed me a couple of times, and we tried to set up a program in Georgia around him, but we realized after doing 3 programs and me having to go out there for every program that we needed more extensive training to be able to do this. And so, and now it's an entire year fellowship where they're shadowing. So they're seeing all of these cases. and not only training the physicians, but also training the chaplains, training the cognitive behavioral therapists. We now have a cognitive behavioral therapy program at Weimar. It's a master's level program, and it's a great program. We have our graduates. So one of our graduates is working in our program and having amazing results with that as well. And so it's going to take a little time to be able to get an entire staff trained. But once we do it for another center, it'll start getting quicker for others, and it can start going fast. But we recognize education and training. And if anyone here on this line has an interest, maybe doing the health program at Weimar, it's just a one semester program. It'll turn you into a medical missionary in 1 semester, and you'll get to shadow the program. And
it's like a 4-month program, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Tina Marie is asking, she says, hello, can you please update us on your GoEQ for children, and how can homeschools, schools, and churches get this for children and youth mental health?
Yeah, so that's one of our exciting projects that somewhat fell into our lap as a result of the Ninth Circuit finding out what we do with emotional intelligence here, and the U.S. territory of Guam wanted to put it in their public school system. And so we have now developed, it's called GoEQ. EQ stands for emotional quotient. And so we have developed an elementary and high school curriculum all the way down to kindergarten. And they had us develop what the Ninth Circuit paid for was 2nd, 5th, and 9th grade. But now we're doing it for a lot more grades, and they're wanting it to be a whole year instead of just a semester. So we have a team of people working on that, and we have the pilots available, and soon we're going to have all of the written material. So if you go to the website goeq.com, make some inquiries, we'll be glad to contact you and see how you can get it in your school.
Fantastic. There are people that know about Luca, and a couple of questions. Any update on Luca?
Well, the latest update I had heard on Luca was that still things were not going well. The medical people and the neurosurgeons associated with him believe there is permanent, irreversible brain damage, but we can't necessarily know for sure. You know, he's not brain dead, and sometimes with these severe brain injuries, it can take weeks or months to get out of a coma, and you have to learn how to talk again and walk again and those sorts of things. But I don't know all of the details. I haven't been by his bedside or seen all of the results, but I know his father is a physician, and there is extreme concern right now. And so we are in need of a miracle, and we're pleading with God to intervene. It would be a tremendous, miraculous, very clear intervention of the Lord to raise him up. And but I can tell you, Luca is a great student. He was with us here 1 semester, and he had made his mark. Very active Christian young man. He loved Weimar. Even during the break, he was showing his Weimar classes that were recorded on video to his family for their family worships, Dr. Shin's classes. And he was just very excited about what he was learning. Very inquisitive young man that loved the Lord and volunteered to help out. My wife was getting Haskell Hall ready for the Christmas concert and things, and having to do a lot of different decorations, and he asked if he could help her. He didn't need to do that, and he and her worked side by side to get Haskell Hall to be amazing at the time of the Christmas concert when the community came in and heard that. And there's so many wonderful things we can say about Luca. And we are much in prayer. The Weimar family has been praying. The students have been praying fervently. We've had even at GYC, our Weimar students there are very much in prayer, and I know everyone in Maine that knows him is very much in prayer. The family is very appreciative of our prayers, and we're still praying fervently for Luca.
Thank you for that update. Jim is asking, we're at 9 o'clock, but we've got a couple of questions, so let's just keep going. Life sometimes brings saddening events. How would someone know if they are temporarily depressed or suffering from depression that needs a program like yours?
So yeah, great question. A lot of depression is situational, a divorce, death in the family, even, the family surrounding Luca, you can obviously understand if they're having symptoms of depression in regards to this. And so we've had a number of individuals that with significant depression that they know is situational, and they still want to come to our program, and we allow them to come to our program. The tools that they learn in regards to overcoming loss, overcoming trauma, the trauma therapy that can be received here, and those tools, plus the biochemical help. So our program helps situational depression, and it also helps endogenous depression, where there's no really external outside bad things that are happening that have tipped it over. And yes, I wouldn't rule out the program if it's quotes, just a situational depression. A lot of times people think, well, time, just give it time. But what we have found out is time does not heal wounds. It's working through them with the right tools over time. So, and that requires some education and some help for most of us to be able to heal as quickly and as thoroughly as possible.
Right. Last question, Dr. Nedley. It's from Angie. It says, I see ads on Facebook for the Nedley supplements. Is it generic for everyone? How do I know if I'm deficient?
Yeah, well, great question. These supplements are over the counter, but I wouldn't say they're necessarily going to help everyone. So it's good for you to know exactly what you're trying to achieve with those supplements. We take the guesswork out of it, obviously, in our residential program, because we're looking at blood levels of all of these things. So what's helpful for people is to recognize what they particularly are deficient in and what is definitely going to help them. But we've had many come to our program that they learned about their genetics. They learned some of the things that are associated with their genetics, and they realize their kids have some of the same issues they do, their parents do, and they realize this supplement helps them a great deal. And so, they just want to go to the supplement and they can. These are all natural things. They're not foreign substances, and they're natural things that they can try. So a lot of people just want to try things out with trial and error and see what works. That's not the way as a biochemical physician that I would do things, but I like it far better. I think it's worth it to know exactly what you need, and what you don't need is not worth taking.
Thank you for that. Any other thoughts here as we close? Anything that we didn't cover that you would like to say?
Well, it did come to mind that I didn't go through all the programs we have. We also have a religion program, pastoral program. We have a business program. Our head of our business program is an entrepreneurial business expert. And we also have a music program. And so several different musical tracks that you can major. Music is part of God's healing ministry, and it's used in all of our programs. Talk about some of the transformation that last Saturday evening with our frontal lobe concert. The patients are continuing to refer back on how that just solidified and helped them And of course, a brain massage through music actually lasts 2 weeks in regards to its improved brain biochemistry. So that's why we have a music program. We also have an education program for teachers. They learn how to teach emotional intelligence as well as their other aspects. We also have an interdisciplinary psychology program, as well as a couple of master's programs, one in planting new churches, revitalizing new churches, using the threefold ministry, and then a master's program in regards to counseling. The state of California, the Board of Behavioral Science has actually approved us as the only 100% unapologetically biblical and uncompromisingly scientific program that leads to licensed counseling in the most liberal state in the union, in California. And of course, that's God opening the way to do that. And so our counselors are able to practice and do well. By the way, we've had a number of nurses go through that program, and every nurse that goes through the program quits their nursing and is exclusively counseling.
How about that? Well, that is wonderful. Dr. Nedley, there's so many other things we could touch. Our hour, unfortunately, is over, and I just want to say what a pleasure it's been to have you on ASI Hour. And at some point in time, we'd love to have you back to talk about, things in more detail about some of the programs and all. But we really appreciate it, and thank you so much. And thank you so much to everyone that came tonight to hear Dr. Nedley. Please share this video with everyone. This will be posted on YouTube and on the ASI Hour on the asiministries.org website. So please share this with anyone. And if you have anyone that may be interested in the program, please contact Dr. Nedley and the depression recovery program there at Weimar. All right, Dr. Nedley, thank you again. And everyone, have a great night.
Thank you.